The competition arena buzzed with energy. Jiwoo floated near the starting position, watching other athletes prepare for the zero-gravity obstacle course. This was the first major event of the Games. Athletes had to navigate through a complex path that wound through several modules of the station. They would push off walls, grab handholds, pass through narrow corridors, and reach checkpoints while managing their momentum in 3 dimensions. Jiwoo watched a Veltari competitor go first. The alien moved like water flowing through the course. Every push was perfectly calculated. Every turn was graceful. The Veltari crossed the finish line with a time that made the crowd cheer. It was a new course record. "Do not let it intimidate you," Hyunki said beside her. "You trained for this. Remember your drills. Small pushes. Control your spin. Keep your eyes on the next target." Jiwoo nodded. Her turn came after several other competitors. She positioned herself at the start. The signal light turned green. She pushed off. The first section required threading through a series of rotating rings. Jiwoo focused on her breathing, just like in training. She grabbed each ring at the right moment, using her momentum to swing to the next one. Her movements were not as smooth as the Veltari, but they were solid and controlled. The second section was harder. She had to navigate through a tight corridor while avoiding moving obstacles. Jiwoo pulled herself along using handholds on the walls. Her muscles, developed under Earth's heavy gravity, gave her strong grip strength. She could hold on longer than many other species. But the third section exposed her weakness. It required precise aerial maneuvering through open space with no walls to grab. Jiwoo had to rely purely on the small gas jets attached to her suit. Other species with natural spatial awareness handled this section easily. Jiwoo struggled, overcorrecting her movements and wasting precious seconds. She crossed the finish line, breathing hard. Her time placed her in the middle of the pack. Not bad, but not impressive either. The crowd barely noticed her performance. Back in the team area, Da-eun gave her water. "You did well," she said encouragingly. "I was too slow in the aerial section," Jiwoo said, frustrated. "Every species has weaknesses," Hyunki reminded her. "The Veltari are amazing in zero gravity, but put them on a planet with normal gravity and they can barely walk. You are doing fine." Over the next few days, the human team competed in various events. There were endurance races where competitors had to complete multiple laps around a course. There were strength tests where athletes had to move heavy objects in zero gravity. There were team events that required coordination and communication. The humans performed respectably in most events. They were not the worst, but they were rarely in the top positions. The galactic media mostly ignored them, focusing instead on the expected rivalries between the dominant species. Jiwoo watched a news broadcast one evening. A four-armed commentator named Crix was reviewing the day's events. He briefly mentioned the human team. "The humans showed good fundamentals today," Crix said in his gruff voice. "But they simply lack the natural advantages of species who evolved for space environments. Their heavy world biology is a handicap they cannot overcome. They are brave to compete, but one must be realistic about their limitations." The word stung even though they were not cruel, just honest. Taeyeon turned off the broadcast. "He is not wrong," Jiwoo said quietly. "We are out of our element here." "Maybe," Hyunki said. "But I have been thinking about something Da-eun said earlier, about how we adapt and try new things." He pulled up some footage from the competitions. "Look at this Korvax athlete. 4 arms, incredible natural ability. But watch how he approaches every obstacle. He uses the same technique every time. It is perfect, but it is also rigid." Da-eun leaned forward, interested. "You are right. I noticed that too. Many species here have been competing in these games for centuries. Their techniques are refined and beautiful, but they are also very traditional. They do things the way they have always been done." "And humans?" Jiwoo asked. "Humans improvise," Hyunki said. "We have only been doing this for a few years. We have no traditions to follow. We just figure out what works and do it." Jiwoo thought about this. It was true that she often found herself trying different approaches during training. Sometimes she borrowed techniques from other sports she had practiced on Earth. Sometimes she just experimented until something felt right. "There are more events coming," Da-eun said, checking the schedule. "Some we have not even heard of before. Maybe we will find one that suits us better." The team continued competing. They won a few smaller events and placed respectably in others. Slowly, Jiwoo began to notice something. Other athletes were watching them more carefully now. Not with the dismissive looks from before, but with curiosity. One day, a Korvax athlete approached her after an event. Through a translation device, he asked about a technique she had used to navigate a particularly tricky section of the course. "I have never seen anyone approach it that way," the alien said. "It was not elegant, but it was effective." "Where did you learn it?" Jiwoo thought for a moment. "I did not learn it anywhere. I just tried different things until one worked." The Korvax seemed puzzled by this answer but nodded respectfully before leaving. That evening, Da-Eun excitedly called the team together. "I found something interesting in the event schedule. There is a competition coming up called Gravity Ball. It is considered one of the most challenging events." "What is it?" Jiwoo asked. "Competitors throw a ball through a course with multiple gravity field zones. The zones shift and change, making the trajectory unpredictable. You have to calculate angles, velocity, and compensate for the gravity changes. The Veltari have dominated this event for over a century." Yoon-ki shook his head. "That sounds like exactly the kind of technical physics-based challenge where we would be outmatched." "Probably," Da-Eun agreed. "But I thought you might want to watch it at least. It is supposed to be quite spectacular." Jiwoo found herself intrigued despite the apparent impossibility. "When is it?" "Tomorrow afternoon," Da-Eun said. "No pressure to enter. Just thought it might be interesting to observe." That night, Jiwoo dreamed about throwing balls. She was back on Earth on a baseball field under a blue sky. She could feel the weight of the ball in her hand, the familiar motion of winding up and releasing. She had spent so many hours of her youth playing baseball, then later competing in softball. It was one of the reasons she had been selected for the space program. Her hand-eye coordination was exceptional. When she woke up, she felt an odd sense of anticipation. Something about Gravity Ball had caught her imagination. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe she would just embarrass herself. But she wanted to see it at least. She wanted to understand what it was about. The next day could not come fast enough. The Gravity Ball arena was different from the other competition spaces. Instead of corridors and obstacles, it was a vast open chamber. At one end was the throwing platform. At the far end, almost 200 meters away, was the target. Between them floated several translucent zones that shimmered with different colors. Jiwoo arrived early with Da-Eun to watch the preliminary rounds. The stands were packed. This event was clearly popular. "Each of those colored zones is a gravity field," Da-Eun explained, pointing at the shimmering areas. "Some pull the ball down. Some push it up or sideways. The zones are not fixed. They shift slightly between each throw, so you cannot just memorize a pattern. You have to calculate a new trajectory every time." Jiwoo watched as the first competitor, a being made of what looked like living crystal, took position. The creature studied a data tablet for several minutes, clearly doing complex calculations. Then it threw. The ball moved in a straight line at first, then curved sharply as it hit the first gravity zone. It adjusted course through each zone, sometimes bending in ways that seemed to defy physics. The ball missed the target by about a meter. The crowd made sympathetic sounds. The score displayed on a holographic board, 73.2 out of 100. 73 is actually quite good, Da-Eun said. "This is an extremely difficult event." More competitors went. A Korvax athlete scored 81. The crowd was impressed. Then Thalrith took her position. The Veltari champion studied her tablet for a long time. Her long fingers moved across the screen, adjusting calculations. Finally, she was ready. She threw the ball with smooth, precise motion. The ball sailed through the air, curving and adjusting as it passed through each gravity zone. It was beautiful to watch, like a choreographed dance. The ball struck the target just slightly off-center. The score appeared, 91.3. The crowd erupted in cheers. It was the highest score of the game so far, though still below the legendary record of 98.7 that had stood for 147 years. Jiwoo watched several more attempts. Each competitor approached it the same way. Study the data, calculate the angles and velocities, throw carefully. The results varied, but the method was always mathematical. During a break in the competition, Jiwoo asked if she could see one of the practice balls. A nearby official, looking amused by the human's interest, handed her one. The ball was about the size of a baseball. Not exactly the same, but close enough. Jiwoo tossed it lightly from hand to hand, feeling its weight. It was heavier than a baseball, but lighter than a softball. The surface was smooth and slightly warm to the touch. She threw it gently upward and caught it. The motion felt natural, automatic. Thousands of hours of practice on Earth had built these reflexes into her muscles and nerves. "What are you thinking?" Tae-yoon asked, noticing the look on Ji-woo's face. "This is just throwing a ball," Ji-woo said slowly. "I know how to throw balls. I have been doing it since I was a child." "But this is completely different," Do-eun protested. "There are gravity fields, complex physics, calculations required." "Maybe," Ji-woo said. "But baseball players on Earth also deal with physics. Wind resistance, spin, gravity. We just do not think about it mathematically. We feel it." Daeun looked skeptical but intrigued. "You want to try? Can I? Is it too late to enter?" Daeun checked her device. "Registration is still open for another hour. But Ji-woo, this is the most technical event in the games. Species with advanced mathematical abilities struggle with it. No offense, but humans are not known for that kind of instant calculation." "You are right," Ji-woo agreed. "We are not good at that kind of math. But we are good at throwing things. Earth has dozens of sports that involve throwing balls. We practice it from childhood. What if that counts for something here?" Daeun considered this. "It is your decision. Hyun-ki would probably say it is worth trying." "Then let us register," Ji-woo said. "What is the worst that can happen? I miss, and everyone knows humans cannot do gravity ball. They already think that anyway." Daeun smiled. "All right, let me handle the paperwork." When Hyun-ki heard about Ji-woo's decision, he looked surprised but not disapproving. "If you want to try, try. Just do not expect too much. This is their event, not ours." "I know," Ji-woo said. "I just want to see how it feels." News of a human entering gravity ball spread through the competitor areas. Most aliens seemed to find it curious rather than threatening. A few looked amused. One competitor openly laughed when he heard. Thalreth approached Ji-woo before her turn. The Veltari's expression was kind. "I heard you registered for this event. That is brave." "Thank you," Ji-woo said. "Your throw was amazing. 91.3 is incredible." "I have been training for this event for 6 years, Thalreth said. "The calculations are extremely complex. I use a computer program to help model the trajectories. Even then it is difficult." She paused. "Do humans have such programs?" "We have programs," Ji-woo said. "But I do not plan to use them." Thalreth looked confused. "Then how will you calculate your throw?" "I am going to try doing it the way I learned on Earth, by feel." The Veltari's large eyes blinked slowly. She clearly did not understand, but she nodded politely. "I see. Well, good luck to you. The attempt itself is admirable, regardless of the result." Ji-woo's turn would come near the end of the competition day. She spent the remaining time watching other athletes and studying the gravity zones. Not with mathematics or computers, but with her eyes. She watched how balls moved through each zone. She noted the patterns, the way trajectories bent and curved. It reminded her of learning to pitch. Her coach back on Earth had always said the same thing. Watch the ball, feel the motion, let your body remember. The mind was too slow for split-second adjustments. The body had to know what to do automatically. Finally, they called her name. Ji-woo floated to the throwing platform. The arena was not as full as it had been for the top competitors, but there were still thousands of spectators. She could hear their murmurs. The strange human who thought she could compete in gravity ball. An official offered her a data tablet with the current gravity field configuration and calculation tools. Ji-woo took it and glanced at the screen. Numbers and diagrams filled it. She understood what they meant in theory, but they told her nothing useful, nothing she could feel. She handed the tablet back. "I do not need it." The official's translation device struggled with this response. Finally he asked, "You do not want the field data?" "I can see the fields," Ji-woo said, pointing at the shimmering zones. "That is enough." The official looked at her like she was insane but did not argue. He moved aside. Ji-woo took the ball. She closed her eyes for a moment, shutting out the crowd, the pressure, the thousands of alien eyes watching. She thought about summer afternoons on Earth, the smell of cut grass, the sound of a ball hitting a catcher's mitt, the perfect moment of release when everything felt right. She opened her eyes and looked at the target. She looked at the gravity zones between her and the goal, and then she stopped thinking and just knew. Ji-woo wound up and threw. The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between the stars. It was the year 2287, and the station was alive with activity. Lights flickered across its surface like a small city suspended in space. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its ports. bringing athletes and spectators from across the galaxy. Inside the station, Jiwoo pressed her face against the observation window. She watched another transport ship arrive, its hull painted with colors she had never seen before. Strange symbols marked its side. She knew those symbols represented a civilization that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Her own species, humanity, had only learned to move faster than light 20 years ago. Jiwoo was 28 years old. She had trained her whole adult life for this moment. Back on Earth, she had been selected from thousands of candidates to represent humanity at the Galactic Athletic Games. These games happened only once every 10 years. They were a chance for different species to compete without fighting wars. Instead of weapons, they used their bodies and skills. A hand touched her shoulder. Jiwoo turned to see Coach Hyun-ki standing behind her. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent decades in space, training astronauts for missions before humanity had joined the galactic community. Now he trained athletes for competitions like this. "Stop staring at the ships," Hyun-ki said. His voice was gentle but firm. "You need to rest. The opening ceremony is tomorrow." Jiwoo nodded but did not move. "Coach, do you think we have a chance? Any chance at all?" Hyun-ki was quiet for a moment. He looked out at the arriving ships. "We trained hard. We used the best equipment Earth could provide. You and the others spent years in zero-gravity chambers learning to move without weight." He paused. "But honestly, most species here evolved in space or on worlds with very little gravity. They were born for this. We have to work harder just to keep up." The honesty hurt, but Jiwoo appreciated it. She had always known they were underdogs. Earth was a heavy world compared to most planets that supported intelligent life. Humans had dense bones and thick muscles because their ancestors had to fight against strong gravity every day. In zero-gravity environments, those advantages became disadvantages. They made humans slower and less graceful than species who floated through space like fish in water. "Come on," Hyun-ki said. "Da-yoon wants to brief the team about tomorrow." They walked through the station corridors. The walls were made of a smooth material that seemed to glow with its own light. Jiwoo saw aliens everywhere. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others floated, their bodies adapted to environments without gravity. One creature passed by with 6 arms and skin that changed colors. Another had no visible eyes but seemed to sense everything around it. The human delegation quarters were small but comfortable. Diane was waiting for them in the common area. She was a scientist who studied alien life, and she had been assigned to help the human team understand the species they would compete against. Diane was younger than Hyun-ki but older than Jiwoo. She had kind eyes and spoke 7 different galactic languages. "Good, you are here," Diane said. She activated a holographic display that showed information about dozens of alien species. "Let me tell you what we are up against." The first image showed a tall, thin creature with impossibly long limbs. "This is a Veltari," Dawn explained. "They evolved in very low gravity. Their bones are hollow like birds on Earth. They can sense exactly where they are in 3-dimensional space without looking. They have dominated the zero-gravity events for centuries." Another image appeared. This creature had 4 arms and thick armored skin. "The Korvax," Dawn continued. 4 arms means they can do multiple tasks at once during competitions. They are strong and fast. More images followed. Each species seemed more impressive than the last. Some could survive in hard vacuum without protection. Others could see in complete darkness or sense magnetic fields. "What advantages do we have?" Jiwoo asked quietly. Da-yoon smiled. "Endurance, bone density, muscle strength relative to body weight. Earth's heavy gravity made us tough. We can work harder and longer than most species here." She paused. "And humans are good at adapting. We learn fast and try new things. That counts for something." Jiwoo wanted to believe it. She had trained so hard. They all had. But looking at the competition, she felt small. The next day, the opening ceremony began. Jiwoo wore her team uniform, which displayed Earth colors and symbols. She floated into the massive arena, along with athletes from across the galaxy. The arena was enormous, big enough to hold thousands of spectators. Its walls were transparent, showing the stars beyond. Each species entered the arena in groups. When the Veltari team appeared, the crowd erupted in cheers. The Veltari moved through the air like dancers, spinning and twisting with perfect grace. They made it look effortless. When the human delegation entered, the applause was polite but quiet. Jiwoo could feel eyes on them. Some aliens seemed curious, others looked dismissive. Humanity was new here, barely worth noticing. After the ceremony, there was a reception where athletes could meet each other. Jiwoo found herself face to face with a Veltari competitor. The alien was at least 7 feet tall, with limbs that seemed too long and thin to be real. Her skin had a faint blue tint and her eyes were large and perfectly black. "You are from Earth," the Veltari said. Her voice sounded like music. "I am Thalrith. I compete in the aerial events." "Jiwoo," she replied. "It is an honor to meet you. I saw your team performance at the ceremony. It was beautiful." Thalrith inclined her head gracefully. "You are kind. Your species is very new to these competitions. My people have been perfecting our techniques for 3,000 years. She said it without arrogance, just stating a fact. "It must be difficult for you coming from such a heavy world." "We have trained hard," Jiwoo said, trying to sound confident. "I am sure you have," Thalrith replied. "Hard work is admirable. I wish you well in the games." Her tone was polite, but Jiwoo could tell the Veltari did not see humans as real competition. They were too new, too heavy, too limited. That night, Jiwoo could not sleep. She floated in her sleeping pod, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, the actual competitions would begin. She would face athletes who had been bred for zero-gravity performance across countless generations. Athletes who moved through space like it was their natural home. She thought about Earth. She thought about her family watching from home, millions of miles away. She thought about all the people who had worked to get humanity to this point. 20 years ago, humans could not even leave their own solar system. Now they were here, competing on the galactic stage. Maybe they would not win. Maybe they would finish in the middle of the pack at best. But they would show the galaxy that humans belonged here. They would prove that Earth had something to offer. Jiwoo closed her eyes and tried to rest. Tomorrow would be challenging, but she was ready to face it. Everything changed after Jiwoo's record-breaking throw. The human delegation's quarters, which had been quiet and largely ignored, suddenly became a center of attention. Reporters from dozens of different worlds wanted interviews. Scientists wanted to study human athletic training. Other athletes wanted to learn about Earth's ball sports. Jiwoo found herself famous across the galaxy overnight. Everywhere she went in the station, beings stopped to look at her. Some asked for photos. Others just wanted to see the human who had done the impossible. The remaining competition events took on a different tone. When human athletes competed now, the crowds actually paid attention. Commentators analyzed their techniques instead of dismissing them. Other competitors treated them with respect. Hyun-ki noticed the change immediately. "People are watching your teammates now," he told Jiwoo. "Really watching. Looking for what makes humans different." "Are they finding anything?" Jiwoo asked. "Actually, yes," Dayun said, joining the conversation. She had been collecting observations from the scientific community. Analysts are noticing that humans excel at explosive movements. Quick sprints, sudden direction changes, powerful pushes, all things that make sense for a species that evolved under high gravity. "They are also noting our endurance," Hyun-ki added. "In longer events, humans tire more slowly than many other species. Our cardiovascular systems are built for sustained effort." Jiwoo thought about this. She had always known humans had these traits, but she had assumed they would not matter in space competitions. Now it seemed they mattered quite a bit. The galaxy had just never thought to look for them before. One afternoon, Thalrith came to visit the human quarters. She brought a request. "Would you teach me to throw the way you do? With the spin?" Jiwoo was surprised but pleased. "Of course. I can try. But I should warn you, I learned over many years. It might not be easy to pick up quickly." "I understand," Thalrith said. "But I must try. You showed me that there are ways of competing I never considered. My people have been using the same techniques for centuries. Perhaps we became too comfortable with our methods." They spent an hour in one of the practice areas. Jiwoo demonstrated the throwing motion, breaking it down into steps. Thalrith tried to copy her, but the Veltari's long, thin arms moved differently than human arms. Her body was built for grace and precision, not for the kind of explosive rotation that created spin. Still, Thalrith persisted. After many attempts, she managed to put some rotation on the ball. It was not as much as Jiwoo could generate, but it was progress. "This is harder than I expected," Thalrith admitted, "but also fascinating. You make it look effortless." "Only because I practiced for so long," Jiwoo said. "When I was young, I threw balls against a wall for hours every day. It seemed like play at the time. I had no idea it would ever be useful like this." The image of the elegant Veltari champion struggling to learn a human throwing technique became widely shared across galactic networks. It symbolized something important, the idea that different species could learn from each other, that no one approach was inherently superior. As the games continued, other surprises emerged. A human athlete named Bo-Ra won a silver medal in an endurance event, outlasting competitors who had seemed unbeatable. Another human, Minho, placed third in a reaction time competition, his explosive reflexes catching everyone off guard. The human team did not dominate the games. They were not suddenly the best at everything. But they proved they belonged. They showed that Earth, despite being a newcomer to the galactic community, had valuable contributions to make. Crix did a final summary broadcast before the closing ceremony. These games have been unlike any in my memory, not because of the usual rivalries between established powers, but because of humanity. They arrived as underdogs barely noticed. They left having changed how we think about athletic competition. He continued, "What did we learn? We learned that advantages come in many forms. We learned that cultural practices matter as much as biology. We learned that intuition developed through practice can rival mathematical precision. Most importantly, we learned to look beyond our assumptions about what makes someone competitive." At the closing ceremony, Jiwoo received her gold medal for Gravity Ball. She stood on a platform with Thalrith, who had won silver in another event, and various other champions. The ceremony celebrated all the competitors, but Jiwoo noticed something different in how the crowd responded to the humans. The polite tolerance from the opening ceremony had been replaced by genuine enthusiasm. After the ceremony, Daun found Jiwoo looking at messages on her communication device. "What are those?" she asked. "Requests," Jiwoo said, amazed. "From schools on different worlds. They want to learn about Earth sports, specifically about baseball and softball. Some want to start exchange programs." Daun smiled. "Baseball is about to become an interstellar sport." "Who would have thought?" "Not me," Jiwoo admitted. "When I was a kid playing in the park, I never imagined aliens would someday want to learn the same game." Hyun-Ki gathered the team one last time before they departed for Earth. "I want you all to remember what we accomplished here. Not just the medals, though those are wonderful. We changed perceptions. We showed the galaxy that humans have unique strengths. We proved that being different does not mean being inferior." He looked at each team member. "When we return home, people will celebrate. They will focus on the records and the victories. But the real victory was simpler than that. We earned respect. We earned our place. And we did it by being authentically human, not by trying to be something we are not." As their ship prepared to leave Nexus Prime, Jiwoo stood at an observation window one last time. Thalrith had come to say goodbye. "I will keep practicing the throwing technique you showed me," the Veltari said. "Perhaps by the next games in 10 years I will be better at it. And I will work on my zero-gravity maneuvering," Jiwoo replied. "Maybe I can learn to move as gracefully as your people do." Thalrith's expression was warm. "We can learn from each other. That is what these games should be about. Not just proving who is best, but discovering what we all can become by sharing our strengths." They embraced in the manner of their respective species, a human hug and a Veltari gesture of mutual respect. Then Jiwoo boarded her ship. During the long journey back to Earth, Jiwoo spent time in the ship's small recreation area. Someone had found a baseball and left it there. She picked it up, feeling its familiar weight. She thought about the long path that had brought her here. Years of training, countless hours of practice, the journey to Nexus Prime. The moment of throwing that ball through impossible gravity fields. It all seemed unreal now. But the baseball in her hand was real. The memories were real. The friendships she had made were real. And the knowledge that humanity had earned its place among the stars was very real. Daun floated into the recreation area. "Thinking about the games?" "Thinking about what comes next," Jiwoo said. 10 years until the next games. I wonder what we will achieve by then." "Knowing humans," Daeun said. "Probably something unexpected. We seem to be good at that." Jiwoo tossed the baseball gently upward in the low gravity of the ship. It rotated slowly as it rose, then fell back into her hand. Such a simple motion. Such a simple object. Yet somehow it had been enough to change everything. She smiled. In the vastness of space among species with millions of years of advancement, humanity had found its place not by imitating others, but by bringing something uniquely their own. They brought the simple joy of throwing a ball, refined over generations into an art form that transcended mathematics. The ship continued toward Earth, carrying its crew of athletes who had dared to compete against the impossible, and discovered that sometimes the simplest skills, practiced with dedication and joy, could achieve the extraordinary. And somewhere on Nexus Prime, a Veltari champion was still practicing her curveball, determined to master this strange human technique. In 10 years, the next games would bring new challenges and new surprises, but the lesson of these games would endure. Every species, no matter how different, had something valuable to contribute to the galactic community. Jiwoo looked out at the stars and felt at peace. She had thrown a ball and set a record, but more than that, she had helped humanity take its first real step into the larger universe, and that was worth more than any medal. The ball left Jiwoo's hand with explosive force. The crowd gasped. They had watched dozens of throws that day, all delivered with careful, measured precision. This was different. The ball moved fast, much faster than any previous attempt, but speed was not the only difference. As the ball flew through the air, it spun. Jiwoo had put rotation on it, just like she would for a curveball back on Earth. It was pure instinct, a motion her muscles had performed 10,000 times. The ball entered the first gravity zone, which was supposed to pull objects downward, but instead of dropping as expected, the spinning ball curved in a way that looked impossible. The rotation interacted with the artificial gravity field in a manner no one had anticipated. In the stands, alien spectators leaned forward. Something unusual was happening. The ball passed through the second zone, where gravity pushed sideways. Again, the spin caused an unexpected effect. Instead of fighting the gravity, the ball seemed to use it, bending its path but maintaining its general direction toward the target. Commentator Crix, who had been preparing to make a dismissive remark about the human attempt, found himself speechless. His forearms hung motionless as he watched the ball's impossible trajectory, through the third zone, through the fourth. The ball adjusted to each gravity field as if it knew where it was going. The spin, the velocity, the angle, somehow they all combined perfectly. Thaloreth stood frozen in the competitor area, her data tablet forgotten in her hand. She had spent years studying the mathematics of gravity ball. She understood the physics theoretically. But what she was watching made no sense. The human had not calculated anything. She had just thrown. The ball entered the final gravity zone. This one was the hardest, combining upward and rotational forces that usually sent balls spinning wildly off course. The spinning ball curved through it like it was following a rail. And then the ball hit the target, not near the target, not close to the center. It struck dead center with a solid impact that echoed through the arena. For a moment, there was absolute silence. The holographic scoreboard flickered, processing the data. Then numbers appeared, 99.8. The silence broke. The crowd erupted in confused noise. Aliens were shouting in a dozen different languages. Officials were checking their equipment, certain there must be an error. The score was impossible. It was more than a full point better than the record that had stood for 147 years. Jiwoo floated at the throwing platform, looking as surprised as everyone else. She had hoped for a decent attempt, maybe to not embarrass herself. This was beyond anything she had imagined. Dayun was screaming in joy. Hyunki had his hands over his mouth, eyes wide with shock. Other human team members were celebrating, not quite believing what they had witnessed. Officials swarmed the arena, reviewing recordings of the throw from multiple angles. They checked the ball for modifications. They examined the gravity field generators. They ran diagnostics on the scoring system. Everything was functioning perfectly. The throw was legal. The score was accurate. Crix finally found his voice. I do not know what to say. In 50 years of covering these games, I have never seen anything like this. The human competitor, Jiwoo, has just set a new record in gravity ball. She defeated a 147-year-old record by more than a full point. And she did it without using any calculation tools. Ladies and gentlemen across the galaxy, we just witnessed history. After the officials confirmed the result, Thaloreth approached Jiwoo. The Veltari champion's expression was a mixture of shock and genuine curiosity. How? Thaloreth asked simply. How did you calculate that trajectory so quickly? What formula did you use? What method? Jiwoo thought about how to explain. I did not calculate anything. I just threw the ball, the way I learned on Earth. But that is impossible, Thalrith said. The mathematics alone would require several minutes to process, even with computational help. You looked at the field for only seconds. On Earth, we have many sports where we throw balls, Jiwoo explained. Baseball, softball, cricket, basketball, football. We start learning as children. By the time we are adults, we do not think about the physics. Our bodies just know. We practiced so much that it becomes automatic. Thalrith struggled to understand this concept. Her entire education had emphasized conscious calculation and mathematical precision. The idea of achieving superior results through unconscious physical intuition was foreign to her. And the spin you put on the ball? Thalrith continued. That was deliberate? Yes and no, Jiwoo said. I put spin on the ball because that is what I always do when I throw. It helps control the ball in Earth's atmosphere. I did not know it would interact with the gravity fields like that, but my body knew to do it anyway. Over the next hours, scientists and sports analysts descended on Jiwoo. They wanted to study her technique. They recorded her throwing motion from every angle. They asked hundreds of questions. One scientist, a being that looked like a floating collection of lights, was particularly fascinated. Your species developed dense muscles and strong bones because of your high-gravity world. This gives you explosive power that low-gravity species lack. But more importantly, you have cultural practices that train this power in very specific ways. Dayun joined the conversation, excited to explain. Humans play throwing games from a very young age. Not as formal training, but for fun. Children throw balls in parks and playgrounds. It is a fundamental part of human culture across most of our world. Remarkable, the scientist said. So by the time a human reaches adulthood, they have performed perhaps millions of throws. The neural pathways and muscle memory are deeply ingrained. They can perform complex calculations unconsciously, using pattern recognition rather than mathematical analysis. Is that what I did? Jiwoo asked. Unconscious calculations? In a manner of speaking, yes, the scientist replied. Your brain processed visual information about the gravity fields and accessed years of throwing experience. It determined the optimal throw without your conscious mind being aware of the process. Fascinating. Crix did a special broadcast about the event. His earlier dismissiveness was gone, replaced by genuine respect. Today we learned an important lesson. The galactic games have always been dominated by species with natural advantages for space environments. We assumed this would always be the case, but the humans showed us that different kinds of advantages exist. He continued, humans come from a heavy world where throwing objects accurately was important for survival, and later became a cultural practice. They spent generations perfecting these skills. What we see as primitive, throwing by feel rather than calculation, turns out to be incredibly sophisticated in its own way. That night, Jiwoo could not stop smiling. She had not just competed, she had won. She had set a record, and more importantly, she had shown that humans belonged here. They might not be the most graceful species or the most mathematically gifted, but they had their own strengths developed through their unique history and culture. Hyunki put a hand on her shoulder. You did something incredible today. You changed how the galaxy sees us. Jiwoo looked out at the stars visible through the station windows. She thought about all the children back on Earth who were playing catch in their backyards right now, not knowing that someday their simple games might take them to the stars. I just threw a ball, she said quietly, like I have done 1,000 times before. Yes, Hyunki agreed, and that was exactly enough.